This is going to be our second video on upgrades, so we're going to go through carburetors, intake manifolds, reed valves, and more, walk you through some of the different things and different ideas on it. So, let's get started. Hey guys, I gotta start off by thanking you guys a lot. So we're just under a year. I think in like 2 weeks it's going to be a year that we started this channel, and my goal was 1,000 subscribers in the year. And because of you guys, we smashed that out of the park. At the moment we're over 1,500. I'm super grateful. I've got some super cool ideas in the future. So, you know, my goal for the next year is to hit 10,000. I really think we can do it. So, and the big thing with that is the more subscribers we get, I have some cool ideas for giveaways that I can help out. I'm not doing this channel to make money. I'm really doing it to help out, teach people. So anything you guys do is greatly appreciated for the channel. So if you guys want to help the channel, you know, I got keychains, sticker packs, t-shirts, stuff like that. We also now started doing their fuel line and water line spacers, so we got them, you know, 4-hole, 2-hole, 3-hole, whatever, all different colors. But as I said, all this stuff goes back to helping the channel out. So whatever you guys can do, it's appreciated. But more than anything, smash the subscribe button, smash the like button, it's greatly appreciated. So let's get started. So there's two main brands of carburetors in the watercraft industry. It's Mikuni or Kian. Me personally, I'm a Mikuni guy. Kian carbs work great. Sudco modifies them. A great carb. It's just not something that I really run. Not saying that they're good, bad, or indifferent. I have found over the years Mikuni's perform better and are less expensive, I guess you can say, to a point. So I'm going to go through all the different Mikuni carbs. I'm going to show you a Kian. I'm going to show you some different reeds and stuff like that. And then you guys can choose what you want. So one big thing is everybody wants to go with a huge carburetor. Now you need an engine's an air pump. So you want the right size carburetor for the amount of exhaust coming out. So if you put, you know, this is a 49, this is a 48, 46, 44, 38, and this is a 40 can. If you take this 49 and put it on a Cowie 650, you know, you might have okay top end, but the bottom end's going to be terrible because you're not going to have any signal on the low speed. So basically the vacuum that is pulling the fuel from the engine coming, you know, pulling the fuel in, with a really small bore, you're not pulling enough for this large carburetor to suck the fuel in. So sometimes people, you know, will go with a, you know, Yamaha 701 and put twin 46s and say it's going to rip. And a lot of times people with a set of, you know, 38 millimeter stock carburetors perform way better. So it's really having the right setup for your engine. So I'm going to start off by showing you the different Mikuni carbs. So this is a Mikuni 38. The way you can tell it is it has 3 holes for the flame arrestor adapter. People ask me, you know, I get a lot of people that they'll go like this and they'll measure the front of the carb and they'll be like, oh no, it's a 40 or it's a 40 and a half. The 40 millimeter is the size of the butterfly. So you always measure from the bottom and you have to measure from the bottom bore. Some of the castings have a recess down here, so you have to get to where it's machined. So if you get all the way up to where it's machined, it ends up being, you know, I don't know if you can see that, 38 millimeters. So this is a 38. Then we go to the 44. which is this carburetor, the 44 and the 46 look almost identical. Obviously the two differences, if you notice at the top, this opening is smaller on the 44 than the 46. You see them next to each other. And then on the bottom, this is 44 instead of 46. Other than that, the carbs are basically identical, other than those two. They have the same atomizer, and basically everything else is the same. Both are great carburetors, so it really depends on your exact setup, on what you're looking to do. 46s, you know, if you want to run a single, run really good on like a 61X that's been modified with a pipe, stuff like that, it's a great add-on. And most aftermarket carbs are made out of one of these two. So what they'll basically do is they will machine the inside completely out of them. They will press in or heat shrink in a flame arrestor adapter with the taper that they want. They will epoxy in or bolt in an atomizer into the inside, and then put whatever size butterfly setup in it. And some do other internal modifications. Two of the main names in the industry that have been around forever are Full Spectrum and Novi. So this is a Full Spectrum carb. Right here, Ed Berzina from Full Spectrum. The guy's a genius. He's building carbs forever. So this is a pitch carbon fiber jet plate. It's really, really cool part. We sell them if you want one. So if you look, it's got a different atomizer. The way the atomizer is set up, there's a whole bunch of small holes that are at different heights, which help with the signal. Everything's kind of built like a wing to help it. And obviously, instead of being a 44 or a 46, this one's a 49. So Full Spectrum makes these in 46, 48, 49, 50, and I think a 50 plus. Phenomenal carb. They atomize fuel really well. Easy carb to tune. Great setup. Novi's. The thing with Novi, also a very good carburetor, but there's a whole bunch of different versions of them. So this is the Clover, I think, atomizer. They have a D atomizer. They've got a few different ones, so it can be different on the setup you have. They all tune slightly differently, so you kind of have to know which one you're running to get it tuned. They're 48s, very good carb still, depending on what you're looking for. So, and then now in the industry, I don't have any of them here. There's some billet carbs. Extreme has a 52. Bun has, I think, a 52. ET has a 52 and a 47, I think. Billet carb, all great carburetors. So it really depends on what you're looking for, and it depends on the engine you have. You know, if you have a 701, putting, you know, twin 48s or 49s on it is really overkill, unless you have some crazy limited race setup that you're trying to run, which, you know, on a 701 I doubt you'd be doing that at the moment, but you never know. So, but that gives you a basic overview on some of the carburetors. All of these are great. You know, honestly, one of my favorite carbs for 701s are the stock 38s. These things jetted properly. They're really, really hard to beat. The amount of bottom end that these things make is truly impressive. And the aftermarket ones that don't have the choke plate and don't have the large ramp built into them really, really perform well. And if you want that, we can modify your OEM carbs to be like this as well, where we bore it out, do a little bit of machining magic, and really make them work perfectly. So now let's go to reeds. Reeds is a tricky one because there's a whole bunch of different options. There's a whole bunch of different, I guess you could say, myths, lore, stuff like that. So you can go with either new reed pedals, new reed cages, reed stuffers. So what is that? So this would be a stock Yamaha 701 cage with steel reeds, no stuffer. You know, this is basically what some of the early ones came with. So, okay reed, the whole problem with metal reeds is if a pedal ever fails, you're going to do serious damage to the engine with that piece of metal going through it. Which is why I recommend at the least put fiberglass reeds in it, so if one ever breaks, the fiberglass isn't going to hurt the engine. Next would be going with a reed stuffer. Here we go. So this is a Cowie cage. So you can see this is a reed stuffer. So it fits in the cage to shrink up the area. What this does is it helps increase the intake velocity, which helps the reeds be more efficient. You know, having it way open, you know, you have an opening this big being fed from a carburetor that small, you're not going to have any speed because the air is going to kind of be all over the place. So by keeping it nice and tight, you keep the velocity up, and it really, really helps performance. So stuffers are a great thing for the setup. The big thing with aftermarket stuffers is a lot of times you have to mount them to your intake manifold. So that's something we will go into later. But you know, if you're on a budget, getting a set of Carbon Tech reeds or Boyesen reeds for the stock cages and a set of reed stuffers to go in it, it's an awesome upgrade and a really, really nice performance. Next would be aftermarket cages. So with Yamaha and Cowie, there's really two major brands that are making aftermarket cages that are out. It's Boyesen and V-Force. So Boyesen is a really, really nice cast cage. They're called rad valves. They have a triple stage reed, as you can see here. They sell some different reeds, so the first pedal could be carbon. So it could be carbon fiberglass, or carbon fiberglass. A couple different variations of what type of pedals are for what you're looking for, or the V-Force, which they have V-Force 1, V-Force 2, and V-Force 3. The main difference is the V-Force 3 reeds for the Yamaha is more like the Kawasaki cage, where it actually mounts on the outside instead of on these two. I'm not a huge fan of them because in the corners of the cases there's just a very little area for them to seal, and they're known for having intake leaks. Now that being said, you can put epoxy in that section of the case, give yourself a proper sealing surface, never have an issue again. It's just my own qualm with it. The V-Force 2s, phenomenal reeds. You know, their basic thing is instead of having a multi-stage reed like this, they have two sets of pedals. So from that, the pedals don't have to open as much because there's more surface area on them. The big thing with pedals is the thinner the pedal and the tighter it is, the more responsive you can end up getting. But a lot of times it's the less time the reed will end up lasting. And it's really dependent on your engine and how you ride. I know some guys with both of these, you know, some guys get 1 season out of them, some guys get 5 seasons out of them. So it's really, really hard to tell, you know, your riding style and how long they're going to last. But reeds are definitely a wear item. And when it comes to most high performance reeds, you know, I normally recommend to people to buy them new, because what ends up happening with a bunch of customers is they'll buy this high velocity intake manifold from somebody, and then they'll notice, oh, the reeds are shot, and they find out how much the pedals are, and by the time they buy 2 packs of pedals to replace them, they might as well have bought them new because they're paying the same, if not more. So just food for thought with that. Same with the V-Force. These are great reeds. The nice thing is they're plastic, so it doesn't hold heat. But to the same token, they're plastic, so if the person before you was messing with them, was a gorilla with it, you know, they could all be stripped out and you could really have a nightmare messing with them. So it's something to think about. When you look at the rad valves basically have a built-in reed stuffer, and you can see everything, zoom in, tapers into the cage, so it keeps the velocity way up. It's a really nice setup that was designed to work in conjunction with the intake manifold, which I'll show you in a minute. Same thing, the V-force, it's not necessarily stuffed, but it is shrunken down, it's divided well, everything's radiused for airflow. And the V-force 3s, which aren't necessarily my favorites, you can get them with a stuffer as well. But that, once again, is preference. Alright, so now how I've said, the high velocity intake manifold's really the best intake manifold out there. One of the benefits, it has what everybody's now calling a speed plate, which these can be bought for other manifolds as well. Makes it quick and easy, to have the carburetors mounted together. 4 quick Allen head screw bolts. They come off. Then you could go to something like a ProTech. This is a ProTech intake, very similar. This is one of the few that you can actually mount the carburetors in both directions. So they could be mounted standard, or they could be mounted, well, it would be mounted this way, to run the linkages this way for certain setups. I think ProTech's the only one that's done this. Riva, R&D all have great intake manifolds. The one thing you want to keep in mind is you want your intake manifold opening to be fairly close to the size of your carburetor. So now, if you buy a high velocity intake manifold and you want to step up to a bigger set of carbs later, and you put a set of 46s on it, that's fine. I wouldn't go smaller than a set of 46s with this intake manifold, because you're going to kill the velocity because it's just too much open air, or you're going to have to stuff this with epoxy to make up for the issue. Same with the ProTech, R&D, or Riva. They come in 44. I think some are 46 and some are 48. So, go accordingly. This one was opened up just a little bit, but keep that in mind. And then the stock intake manifold is actually a really good manifold. So this is a stock Superjet manifold. It's 38. What I do with these is I will epoxy fill this, I'll then mill it, and then you can just mount the reeds right onto here. You don't need the metal spacer plate in between, and it keeps both cylinders running separate. It's an upgrade I do, but a lot of people, the first thing they want to do on a 701 is upgrade to bigger carbs, and honestly, the 38s run phenomenally. It's really almost like a perfect size carb for, a fairly modified 701. When you start to go over 760, that's when you want to look at a 44 or bigger. But until then, stick with the 38s and you can modify the stock manifold, have great success with it. So, but that gives you a different idea on some of the different manifolds. Obviously, there's also billet manifolds out there. I don't have any here at the moment. I did a video for the 1100 showing one of the DAS manifolds. They're really a piece of artwork. But that gives you a general idea on different manifolds for these. So let's go to flame arrestors. There's tons of different options for them. There's platinum flame arrestors, pod flame arrestors like these, whole bunch of different shapes, sizes, whatever, and then the OEM air boxes, which also work really well. And it depends on what you're looking to do. If you're going with a large set of carbs with a huge motor, unfortunately, you're going to end up having to go with a pod flame arrestor, and I recommend going with a set of outerwears like this, which is basically a hat or whatever you want to call it that goes over it, which has a very fine screen, which doesn't allow water in, but allows air through. I really recommend putting these on anytime you're running any kind of flame arrestor like this. It's going to really save your butt, because water ingestion really does a ton of damage to jet skis. So the other thing, you know, the stock air boxes work really well if you're running a single carb, or even, you know, twin 38s on a superjet. The stock air box works phenomenally. If you're running an ADA head, you can modify the air box. I'm going to do a video in the future how to modify the air box with an ADA girdle head. You know, certain ways you grind the air box, and I even use a little piece of HydroTurf on the inside to have everything seal perfectly. It works great. So, you know, just going to, here's the big thing with a jet ski. You're trying to do two things. You're trying to get air in the engine, and you're trying to keep water out. If you're just riding around, you know, buoy racing, stuff like that, going fast, not trying to go upside down, you know, a standard flame arrestor like this with an outerwear, awesome. Best setup you can get. You're going to love it. Phenomenal. If you're trying to do freestyle, though, you got to remember, when you go upside down, when you're upside down, the water follows. So every time you're doing a barrel roll or a backflip, you're basically turning the inside of your hull into a washing machine. And every time it goes around, that water's going to splash your flame arrestor, and you don't want the water going through your carburetor. So the stock flame arrestor, the way they're designed, is really designed well for it. So removing one screen out of it, and running it like that, you're going to love it. I do recommend, though, if you're going to run the stock flame arrestor, some people just run a single screen, and I've seen a bunch of guys running a single screen that they have a wire tie or they have a small screw bouncing around inside their hull, that they do a barrel roll, they do a backflip, it gets sucked up in, and kabang, and there's no more motor. So, you know, at least run two screens if you're going to do it. If you're not going to do that, know that you're running a risk. But once again, it's your stuff. If you want to send it, and if it blows up, it blows up. There's nothing wrong with that either. So I hope you guys think, let me show. So now, last thing, this is a Kian 40. Great carb. They make the Kian 40 in a 2-jet or a 3-jet. It just doesn't happen to be a carb that I particularly like. As I said before, some of the Sudco carbs, people swear by them. I've just found that a stock 44 is really hard to beat. And then on top of that, if you end up going to a full spectrum carb, in my opinion, full spectrum over the years has been, you know, the industry's gold standard. There's some other carbs coming out now that are giving them a run for their money, but these carbs just last. It's one of the easiest carbs to tune, so you get a good set of them, you can't go wrong. But once again, if you're buying used carburetors, check the carburetors. The first thing I tell people, you know, look in the carburetor, open it up, make sure that the butterfly isn't all nicked on the sides because the throttle shaft end play wasn't set wrong. You don't know how many really expensive carbs get sent to me because whoever set them up didn't set the shafts up right with a coupler, and it just beat itself to death. And then, you know, you spend several $100s on new shafts and butterflies to rebuild your supposedly perfect carbs. And if they're beat up like that because the air goes through the side instead of, you know, when the carb's slightly cracked, the air is going over the low speed circuit. But if there's a big nick in the corner, what ends up happening is the throttle valve has to basically be closed for it to idle because the air is going through the side, but with the air going through the side where those dings are, it's not going over the low speed circuit. So a lot of times people will be like, man, you know, until I'm at part throttle, this thing runs like crap. And a lot of times when you have issues like that, it's a throttle shaft and butterfly issue. So once again, guys, if you've made it this long, thank you. Please smash the subscribe button. I really, really want to try to hit 10,000 before the end of the year. Also, I'm thinking about doing some type of giveaway. I don't know how to do it, whether it's going to be like machining a top end for somebody, stuff like that. So, and it's going to be all for my subscribers. So if you guys subscribe, in the next month or two, I'm going to be doing some type of giveaway. If you guys want to give some ideas, obviously, you know, we recently got monetized. It's not like I'm making really any money on this. But, you know, I'd be happy to machine the top end for somebody, give you guys a discount on a top end kit, do all the machine work, send it back to, you know, 1 or 2 lucky subscribers. So we will find a way, whether it's done, you know, here on YouTube or on Instagram or on Facebook. So if you guys follow us on all 3, better chance you're going to end up getting in on it. But we're going to find something cool to give back because I'm super grateful for you guys helping out. So you guys have a good night. Thank you for watching. Catch you later.